Well, welcome everybody. Let's see here. I'm gonna do one more little thing here. I'm gonna pin myself for now. So welcome. My name is Patricia Watts. I'm the founder of Art Space, and today I flew a red eye from New Mexico to JFK early this morning. I've had maybe 3 hours sleep, and took a taxi over here to the BioBAT Space, which is so cool. And I wanted to come here for, I guess it was founded in 2019. So since then, obviously heard a lot about it through the pandemic. And also Elena Soterakis.
Perfect.
I'm saying her great Greek name correct. Became an institution member this year, and that caught my eye. I was like, okay. And I knew that another member of ours, Jeannie Bardo, who runs Stand 4 in in Bay Ridge, and we had a show there last year. And I went out there. We did a kind of a similar walking around the space. It was a much smaller space. This is like the antithesis. Like this is beyond your wildest dreams kind of space. It's so big. So excited to share with you today. When I arrived, Elena and I took a tour together. We filmed it because the Wi-Fi is not very good in the downstairs space where the galleries are. So we wanted to make sure that that was at least, it would happen, but it's not perfect. So we'll apologize ahead of time. And we'll go through it. Elena's going to go through it, but I just wanted to say, Elena has spent 2 years working on the show, and it's all research-based works, 11 artists, 2 of them are art space artists, Keren and Anavy and Christopher Lynn. The title of the show is Water Stories, and this is her, I don't know if it's your curatorial debut as your largest show.
Oh, this might be my largest show.
Yeah. I mean, this is big. This is important. And so excited to be here, excited to get to know Elena better and to look at the space. And I'm assuming because we have over 90 people signed up today that everyone's excited to see what she's doing here. And I think you'll be excited when you see this. And it'll want you to make you want to come here as soon as possible. Okay, so I'm going to unpin myself and get you in here, Elena, and you can share our tour.
Sure. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Really excited to share the work we're doing at BioBAT. It is an unusual space because we're embedded in a biotech incubator. So there's biolabs upstairs, and all of our programming revolves around bioart and the labs, and particularly the waterfront outside. So I'm going to share my screen right now. And so all together, we have a 30-minute video sharing our tour. Okay. So nice to see you finally. I'm glad you get to see the space. Thank you for coming from so far and being a trooper with the traveling and coming right from the airport. So I really appreciate you making a pit stop.
I wanted to be, to come over here at least the last 2 times I was in town, so this is awesome.
Yeah. Great. So I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about the Brooklyn Army Terminal. So it was built in 1918 by Cass Gilbert, who was a Beaux Arts architect, and so he made the terminal that was designed for World War II to bring soldiers in and out. So they'd come in by train and then go out on boats. So this was all military manufacturing. And so it's kind of nice that now this decommissioned military base is being used for climate tech and biotech and art. We have some art spaces here. The Museum of Natural History stores their whale bones here. And so it's an interesting mix of things happening here. And then Janine Bardo and I co-founded this in 2019 when they invited us in to put permanent artwork for a ribbon cutting ceremony. And then we pitched the idea of creating a bioart gallery and something dedicated to ecology and art and science, and then this became like a big collision space for all of that. So there's labs upstairs. So BioBAT stands for Bio Brooklyn Army Terminal. And then there's labs upstairs that are doing COVID research. And one of our labs is the Interstate Environmental Commission that regulates all the waterways in New York City, New Jersey, and Connecticut. And so ever since they joined the incubator, I've wanted to do a project with them. So this is the project that's been a couple of years in the making, and especially since we're on the waterfront. Water stories, yeah, talking about how all these different artists, scientists, people are interacting with the waterways, and then also highlighting the work that the IEC does. And so this show was sponsored by the labs upstairs, BioBAT Inc., but also the Interstate Environmental Commission, and also the EPA, which funds the Interstate Environmental Commission, which is very unusual to have science agencies and environmental agencies supporting work like this. And Yoko Shimizu, who's a Japanese-Austrian artist, who's a researcher and has a bio-art lab in the Future Lab in Ars Electronica in Linz, Austria. So she got to be an artist in residence for a month, and the labs very generously supported her travel. They paid for her lodging and the production of all of her work. So this was a really exciting moment to be able to finally interact with the labs in a more substantial way. So this project is called The Estuary of the Echoes. And so Yoko would go out on boats and collect water samples with the team, and then the circles are bacterial colonies that then she made punch-outs of on each location, which is a way of making a music disc. So I can show you how Yoko was able to sonify the sound. Yeah, and I love that Yoko is very futuristic and has a lot of technological skills, but she made this beautiful analog music player. And so the more holes it has, the more E. coli, Soterakis, it's representing organisms that can be really problematic for human health. So especially in the summer, when there's large water runoff from rainfall, then we have sewage overflow, and especially right here in the New York Harbor. So these are images from right out front.
So does it flood here?
Oh, during Hurricane Sandy it did. Yeah, and like in
this building had water.
Yeah, like 2 or 3 feet of water. And so, thinking about
I was driving down, I was thinking, this is a flood zone.
Oh, big time. And in 50 to 100 years, we may not even be here. So that's something to think about in all of our work. And with the Gowanus Canal, they're building luxury condos on flood zones and different things that have a lot of impact for human health. So that's something that we're addressing in the show. That's part of the water stories.
Nice.
And then so these are all images of testing spots. And then here are examples of the bacterial colonies that Yoko was inspired by. These aren't the exact ones, but so do you see how there's these circles? Those were the circles that she's translated into the discs. And this was a way to have viewers engage with the waterfront and the contaminations and the health issues in a very gentle, kind of immersive way.
Nice, very nice.
And then this is a video collage that she made, and do you see how it's like shaking and there's this little bit of a glitch?
Yes.
So she's thinking about these E. coli samples and bacterial growth as kind of glitches in the matrix, kind of like environmental glitches. And you can see there's heavy, so the Hudson River and the New York Harbor outside are the most heavily trafficked waterways in the country. So it's really important for commercial. Yeah, commercial. Yeah, and then she did another, so these are water testing samples, and then where the bacterial colonies are, she put actual marine waste that she collected from right outside. So all the marine waste you see is directly from our waterfront, a couple of feet in front of us. So Yoko just hopped over the fence and was collecting marine waste. And you'll see a lot of it, it's like straws, bottle caps.
This is a nice way to display it. I like this.
Yeah, it has a window like box. So it's a frame with like a thing.
It's nice.
Yeah. Yoko, everything she does is very elegant and
She thinks it through and
beautiful. And then this is a photo essay that she took of her time. So these are all the different testing sites. These are the scientists This is the Gowanus Canal Conservancy. These are what the boats look like that we went out on. And we would get up at 5 in the morning and go testing, and then they have to come back here immediately and test the samples. So the IEC crew, you'll see them just coming in and out nonstop with big coolers of water, and especially in the summer months, they're working really hard. So I also wanted the space to be a place to kind of show the work that this agency upstairs is doing and to understand what goes into water monitoring. And then also you'll see that there's fluorescing bacterial samples, so when they test positive for E. coli, they fluoresce. And so you'll see, these are all things that Yoko's responding to in the backspace. And so these are some samples from the water where she grabbed her chlorophyll. This is Yoko in the lab. And this work is by D.B. Lamon. D.B. is an open water swimmer and has a studio here in the Army Terminal and created Makerspace, which is a large space to rent. And so she found marine waste and made this costume, and then she did this performance where she goes out into the water and collects shells in a very kind of mythological way and performative way. And her husband Scott's also an artist, and he did the filming with the drone. So it's just interesting to see how artists on the waterfront are engaging.
That's great. She's going in the water. I mean, is the water's fairly clean right here?
Oh, this is not right here.
No.
This was like further off of Staten Island.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah. You know, it's interesting. People do fish here and eat they fish their own food from right out front. So you know, and at one point we could healthily live off the water, but. And then here we have Keren and Anavy's work, who will be talking later today. And so she uses mylar and ink and actually used the actual water and ocean. She did a residency right in Guild Hall, where she was a waterfront studio, and so this was her reacting to all the waves with water and ink. And then she has this piece as well. And she does a lot of direct observation.
So she's kind of made them into like a core sample.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So is this something that she found here? Or?
Oh no, that's her kind of way of displaying the work. Yeah,
Her framing device.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, framing device. Also, she has dancers and people interact with those sculptures and do dance performances. So I'm sure this is just getting into the way her thought processes. But
we'll go more.
Yes, yeah. And yeah, she's going to be presenting later, so we can talk more. And these are more shells that she collected from Long Island direct observational plexi paintings. And then for this, we also collaborated with the University of Tokyo because they were doing really incredible public community projects where they're regrowing coral, they're creating really interesting design projects to do waterfront cleanup. So when we have a symposium in the spring, we're going to invite them to come and we're going to do some cleanup projects with them. Yeah, and also, so most of this is a local dialogue, but we wanted to bring in a local, like local to global.
Translates in other places.
Yeah. And then over time, so we started out with just a lobby, and then over time, the city and BioBAT Inc. was very generous to let us activate unused storage space, and then that's how we created the dark space for multimedia installations. So you'll see this is Keren's installation back here. This is called When Blood Turns to Water, and this piece is very much about grief and the cleansing properties of water, and was inspired by a poem. She does have a lot of work, and then she has this video projection here. And this is like a really nice tranquil place to sit and see in the installation. And that sounds of the water. Her daughter, who recently unfortunately passed away. A lot of this work is responding to that, and the audio file that we're listening to was her daughter's recording of their last time at the beach together. I know it's really emotional, charged. And then these are some of the things that she collects in her studio from the residency. I don't want to say too much because she's
I know,
going to be
she's gonna
talking.
go.
It's better to hear from the artist herself. But just, I wanted everyone to have a sense of what the installation feels like and the sound component. And
So this is all air conditioned and like in this, no, of course not, right?
well, this area is, but the warehouse space isn't.
Okay.
So because of that, we did have some algae.
I was wondering.
Yeah, I mean, it does affect the living art.
I smell mold.
Yeah.
I smell it right here.
Oh, I don't think they're mold, but in the summer when we have heat waves, so these bags are part of an installation performance that two performance artists, Aransha and Sarah, did, where they had nails in the bags of water, and it was performed here in March. So you'll see a 3-channel performance here that was filmed here. So that was just a reference. This is the warehouse space that we call the dark space.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we have this piece here is called Black Mayonnaise, and it's referring to the Gowanus Canal. Do you know about the history of the Gowanus and how it's a super fun site? And so the EPA is doing a dramatic capping and dredging project where they're scooping up all the black mayonnaise that they call the leftovers from the tar and the petroleum and industrial waste, and they're putting it on a barge and shipping it somewhere, and then putting concrete to cap the entire canal, which is kind of an aggressive way of dealing with this. And so what we were hypothesizing is, and this is something that's really important to the gallery, it's not just theoretical ideas, where like we take post-humanism and those ideas of celebrating interspecies collaboration, and here you can see it pulling up that horrible, and think about all the particulates that get into the air, and now they're building all luxury condos here. And so, you know, a big part of the show is questioning what happens to the natural existing habitat there? What are other ways of using natural bioremediation to solve this issue?
Look how black it is.
Yeah. And it's also just sad to think that when Brooklyn was being developed at the turn of the century, that they were just dumping their waste and not thinking about human health. And so big, yeah. And we're primarily composed of water, and there's micro magnification, so anything, any particulates, anything toxic that gets into the water gets into our
That's
bodies.
really powerful, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Making the invisible visible.
That's a big part of this show. So maybe it makes sense to, well, I guess we'll go to Yoko's piece next. So this is a video that Yoko filmed while she was doing water testing. So this is right out our front door. It's kind of an artistic interpretation of the outside and the powerfulness of water.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And a lot of the industrial places we visited, you can't go by boat. No commercial vehicles can go there. So it was interesting to go into these marshes and kind of hidden depths of the New York Harbor. And then this piece was taken from one of her samples. So this is video microscopy of chlorophyll and what it looks like up close. So this is what it would look like in a test tube. And then showing what it looks like up close in the video microscopy.
Hues of green. So were these more green at one time and now
They
they've
were,
turned?
yeah, over time.
Light.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe when she comes back we can refresh them.
Yeah.
And this was interesting because the lab upstairs, they normally don't use video microscopy for things, and having her in the lab and using video, it's just a different way of interacting with the samples. And we're all about using the arts to advance science and not just be data visualization.
Right.
You know, like something that we're big on is bringing like a speculative, playful kind of way into the work that researchers are doing. Just watch your step here.
Okay.
So this is, remember how some of these areas were fluorescing?
Yes.
So this is Yoko's response to that, and these are the actual samples and what they look like when they test positive and fluoresce.
So does the BioBAT company make these? Or?
No, but the lab upstairs uses it for testing. So what they do is every couple of weeks they give us new samples.
Okay.
And so, yeah, because a lot of people think of fluorescence as something unnatural, but there's all sorts of bioluminescence and it's part of nature. And so this is kind of Yoko's response to the fluorescing samples.
So this is the same film on two sides?
Yes.
So are they two parts?
No, it's just transparent. It's just like a transparent. Yeah, we just wanted, normally they come back, but I wanted it transparent so that, and then we have this listening room, and this is where we encourage people to look at maps and learn about the waterways, and I curated a bunch of books, and Eve Barrow, our researcher, helped with making a reading list, and so we encourage people, we have books like Plastic Ocean. Oh, you have Plastic Ocean? Yeah.
Inga Borg.
Yes.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, and then remember I was saying how we wanted to have a local dialogue that then became global. So there were all these researchers and artists and people that we wanted to loop into the show, but we didn't have the resources to bring them here.
Yeah.
So Eve Barrow and BioBAT Art Space produced 11 episodes that go with the show. And this is also used in a lot of sustainability classrooms. And I was just in Singapore and they're using this as part of their arts and ecology master's program. So this is also like a tool for schools and people to engage
so
with the
video
work.
Interviews with them.
Very nice. Yeah.
How long are they?
They're about 30 minutes, and this one's only audio, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, all
So
audio,
podcast.
and it's on YouTube and Spotify. Yeah, and then this is one of our more interactive pieces that I really love. It's called Watering the Sounds. Would you like to water?
Sure.
Put water in the bowl.
So put it up here. So the movement of the water?
It's actually, this is water from New York Harbor, and the salinity
salt?
conducts, fills the circuit, like completes the circuit, so then it starts.
Oh, this is very cool.
Isn't it very like mythical? It's like very siren.
Yeah.
Very poetic.
Whose is this?
This is Ranjit and Anna. So Ranjit is a Brooklyn-based musical artist, experimental sound artist, and Anna's from Denmark. And so Anna was here for the opening and was just singing, walking through the columns. It was quite beautiful.
Yeah, we don't do sound enough in the visual arts, right?
Yeah, and also it's important to have different views of water. So some of them are more scientific, some of them are more spiritual, some of them, I mean, it's important to notice that water can be like harmful, it can be something that sustains life. It has all these different facets that it can take. Here we have Christopher Lynn's work, who will be presenting later today.
I've seen lots of pictures of you. This is my first time seeing it in person. Well, actually, I did see it at stand 4.
At stand 4
last year.
for the,
Yeah.
So you have a banker's desk and silver dollars, not silver dollars, what are they called? Those are called, wait, what are they called?
Sand dollars.
Sand dollars, that's what I meant to say, sand dollars.
Those look very white. Yeah, mine are very gray.
No, I guess.
That I collected in the ocean in California. Yeah.
And then I love the moss jewelry.
Right.
All those little details. So there's these micro krill shrimp inside the terrariums that are self-sustaining. And then a lot of people think that this color effect is from light optics, but it's actually antifreeze from different countries. So America is blue, no, America's green, Mexico is blue, I think Korea is purple, and so it's called chemical refraction.
There's a little fish in here.
Yeah, there's little tiny microcurl shrimp in there.
The krill,
Yeah, so they are.
Oh my gosh.
They're in a.
Oh my gosh, that's wild. So yeah, so it's a little microcosm inside something toxic.
Which is kind of a metaphor for our bodies.
Yes.
If you think of the body as its own planet, its own ecosystem, in a more toxic. The only thing is there's a solid glass, wall
Yes.
between them, and
Yes.
with us,
We're permeable.
we're permeable, and so when we
Yeah.
pollute the environment and pollute water, we're polluting our own bodies.
Yep.
This is a piece by Sarah Nelson Wright and Edrix on Tila, and I think this is one of the best uses of VR that I've seen in a really long time. So in here, and this nautical kind of wood, this is a 360 VR piece where it transports you to endangered coastlines, and you can move it up and down and all around.
Oh wow. Yes, this is good. Might as well be outside, right? There's plastics, styrofoam. So where is the actual imagery from?
Oh, it's from the Kilvan Cove, the Arthur Kill, Ratatina Bay, and Lower Bay. And then we also have articles that Nathan Kessinger, Sarah's husband, who did Lacamides, wrote about all of these spaces. So he's an expert on, yeah, you could probably look in.
I gotta go with it.
And then the next piece I want to take you to is this piece from the Scope Collective. So unfortunately, the piece is not fully installed, like the lights aren't fully turned on because they have to be on timers for living organisms. So we couldn't have it totally at this time. It turns on, I think, at 12. But this group is Dr. Elizabeth Henoff from NYU and her collaborators that are artists and carpenters and sound musicians. And they brought in 200 gallons of water from the Gowanus Canal. And so this tank goes back very far deep into the wall, and there is a time-lapse video running like 24/7. And what their response is, how do we celebrate the natural ecosystem of the Gowanus Canal and the microorganisms that have evolved naturally to bioremediate the toxic sludge. So not only are they breaking it down and eating it and surviving on it, they're thriving on it. And so the whole point of this installation is to show that these microorganisms are doing heroic things. And adapting, and that nature has all the answers, and really thinking about how we can use nature to naturally fix many of our problems here. And so this is an example of the art advancing sciences. Since she wanted to study this more in her lab and didn't have the right clearance, we essentially built a lab for them inside of these walls. Yeah, and so this is, so in these tanks we have running water. And so in these organisms, they're testing to see how they're reacting to more environmental, like running water the way it would be in
Is it metals? Like
I think
iron?
I think that's a lot of it is, yeah, it could be leftover metal. Some of it's growth from being in the tank, and when we have that heat wave. And so the water comes down through here, and it goes into this tank, which goes, the water levels rise up and down. And you can see there's a projection map to the wall with different pictures from the canal and areas of the.
Is that just the way it is? Or
Oh no, that's just supposed to entices you to look through and see that we're directly in the waterfront.
Oh, that's great. So yeah, it's like a soft roll-up door, and they just cut a hole in it.
Yeah, so this is a freight door. So there's many freight doors throughout here that we kind of hide and try to use as part of And then they put like sitting areas. There's a sound piece. They also need these swings because they encourage people to sit and spend time. So the Scope Collective was like a band. They were always hanging out, riding their like scooters and bikes through the space.
I like it.
And all the materials are from Fab Scrap, which is located in the Brooklyn Army Terminal. They sell reused like waste from fashion waste.
Nice.
So all of this has been repurposed.
Yep.
Yeah, the Scope Collective is super. And they're doing a performance here. They're going to have a dance performance here, and doing all sorts of interesting things. But normally there's a bright light that like shines on that wall and illuminates that wall.
Okay.
And then this piece is called the algae chorus, where the algae in here, there's 3 different types. It reacts to the Earth's CO2 emissions and creates a chorus. But unfortunately, it's sleeping right now because it's on a timer and we can't keep it going 24/7. But I thought it was a really interesting way to display the algae and talk about our relationship. Because algae blooms can be very dangerous and kill a lot of native like fish and populations, but it can also convert CO2 into oxygen. So she's really thinking about all the different ways that we can use and work and explore with.
So it's a choir.
It's a choir. It's a choir of algae.
Of 3 voices representing the different algae.
Yeah, so lots of interspecies collaborations happening in this space.
Maybe you have a sound file we can share?
Oh, I have a video I can share. Yeah, a sound file or a video. Yeah.
Is all this on your website?
Yes.
Okay. And so you can watch video of that.
With the sound, we don't have that on our website, but if I get permission from the artist, I'm sure I can put it on, or I can share it with I'm sure I can share it with the ecoartspace community to see
This is beautiful. It's a painting.
And then the last piece is that 3-channel performance I was telling you about that we filmed in March in the dark space in that like long corridor. So they had bags of water with nails and they were swinging them back and forth. And when the water would break, there was soil on top of the sculpture, and the artists carved the names of all the extinct species from the canal into this water drop. Oh, it was a really beautiful piece by Sarah and Aransha. And because they were getting the bags were swinging and they were slicing their fingers a little bit, it was a very emotionally intense piece to see in person.
Is that it?
Yeah,
that's
it.
A lot.
And I kind of gave you the abbreviated kind of, but yeah, as you can see, we really embrace the warning moving equipment. We embrace all the industrial portions of the space. Yeah. We love it, and it's part of the history, and
it has multiple meanings that are relevant to what's in the space.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad you finally got to visit. And we'll see everybody on Zoom soon.
Very soon.
Thanks. Okay, so I think that's a great place to end the tour. Thank you all for sitting through our virtual tour that we just did. And I think this is a great opportunity to introduce Keren Anavy, who's tuning in from Israel, and it's 8:30 at night there, to share her works with us. So Keren, I'm going to hand it over to you. And
Thank you. Do you hear me? Thank you so much, Elena, for this beautiful show, and thank you for inviting me to exhibit my works, and thank you for Patricia from Art Space for this virtual tour, and everybody for joining us. It's really exciting exhibition. It's a huge exhibition. The dark space is very, very dark, so I really encourage everyone to visit the show in person and feel the experience. It's really a great adventure, I think. So I want to share now my slideshow so I can talk a little bit more deep on about the works that I'm presenting in this show. So I decided to start with this slideshow. It's a very simple photo that I took with my iPhone while I was walking, and this is actually a photo about water without any water, and it's very, in a way, symbolize the place that I'm coming from, which is from the Middle East, in a very desert area without so many water sources. And what you see here is a very dry landscape and a stone, actually a rock, painted with blue that I just found when I was walking around my house in Israel. And it's very symbolized the water, the absence of water. And I moved to the US 9 years ago. Just a second. When I moved to Israel 9 years ago, I was really amazed from all the water that was around me, especially in Brooklyn and in Manhattan, which Manhattan is actually, an island. And I started to do works that connected to water. But in a way that sometimes it's without any water. This is the detail close up to the installation that I have in BioBAT that you just seen in the film, and this is the floor installation with the cement bricks. There is 450 bricks in a BioBAT Art Space actually, and it's industrial bricks from the area of Brooklyn. And what I try to do in this installation, it's represent the way that I experience water during the past 2 years. Mostly when I did several residencies in art residencies in Long Island area, including the South East Hampton, Amagansett area, Montauk area, and also the Norfolk. So what you see on those bricks is all the things that I collected during this experience, which is seaweed, stones, seashells, all kinds of. You can see the crab horse shell over there, and together with some paintings on mylar, and it creates this floor installation that it's for me it acts like a visual diary of my own personal experience, especially as an immigrant artist that experienced something very new in a way, but also it's something that looks, this structure, it looks something in between an archaeological site, something about history, some kind of ruins, but at the same time, because I'm using these cement bricks from Brooklyn industrial area, very close to BioBAT Gallery, so it's also about trying to build something new from these ruins. So it's kind of in between. And when you walk around, when you're in the exhibition and you walk around this floor installation, you kind of discover new things and all kinds of these things from the ocean that for me are very much was new. Above this, the floor installation, there is a canoe. This canoe, it's something that I started very recently to kind of collect used canoe from specific people that I meet through the Facebook marketplace. And it's very important for me that this canoe was belonged to someone. So someone that has a story, that has a history. So it's kind of a found object, but I prefer to call it a used object. It's a very large canoe. This specific canoe is 18 feet. It's considered to be a three-person canoe, or they like to call it a family canoe. And it's something that's very important for me, the symbolize of the three-person canoe. And I collected it from a guy that used to ride with this canoe in the Hudson River, actually all of his life. We can see a little flag of the United States there. So it's charged with history of this person, and the United States flag is very symbolized for me also as an immigrant artist. But the family canoe for me also tells a story about the huge loss that we had, that me and my family had this year. So from the canoe, there is a sound walk that you can hear it when you will visit the exhibition, and it's waves that my daughter recorded during the residency that I did in near Montauk. And it's become to be something very, very emotional for me, and it's connected to this visual diary that we see on the floor. So it's a sound of a wave, but the end of the waves, it's like clapping hands. When the waves is coming back to the shore, to the beach, it always has a kind of a slight sound of clapping hands. So it's something that also very performative, but of course very much personal for me, and I hopefully for the viewers, it also take the viewers to the visitors in the exhibition to the place and connecting to the place by the ocean. And I call this canoe installation that hang from the ceiling 365, because for me it's like 365 days year round, of course, living with this memory, living with this very grief in a way. This is a very, very new kind of work for me, and I continue to collect canoe boats after this experience in BioBAT. This was my first canoe. Now I have several others from people that has history in the water. Hopefully to do a larger installation with several canoes, and I found that the title of the exhibition, Water Stories, I found it very relevant for me also, because actually the whole project to collect canoe from someone, it's very, very interesting. And I started to do docu video about the process behind the scene, about the people with the stories about the boat. So I have kind of a new project in progress that I call it Boat Stories. And I think something with the exhibition that Elena curated affected me very much. And sometimes as an artist, it doesn't directly, you don't notice that how much it directly affected you. It's kind of sitting behind somewhere behind your thoughts, and then it's starting to reveal itself. This is a detail from the second large installation that I'm exhibiting in Water Stories, which is the name of this installation is Blood Will Turn into Water, and it's actually a line from a song that talks about the way that wars. There is no way to say sorry about wars, about death, and so the blood with the time will turn into water, in the sense that we must be optimists, because water is, of course, first thing is life. So this is definitely not a blood. This is the ink with water, ink, red ink, and green ink. And the installation is also involved with mirrors, as you can see. And then from this installation that actually starting to build a structure in the space, we can also view the video together with a few kind of, you can sit on this kind of rocks and see the video. The video is called I Wish I Had a River. And this is a video that I also projected on Times Square billboards 2 years ago. And in this installation in BioBAT, it's actually act as for me, as a moon in a way. The video is it's mixed together with the paintings, animation that I have together with water source around New York area. And for me as an artist, it's very important that everything will be very connected to the place that I exhibit. This was the reason why the bricks are specifically from Brooklyn industrial area. And the water source that are in the video are also video that I took in New York area. The painting that you see here, the red paintings are ink and colored pencils on mylar. And mylar is actually a very unnatural material. It's actually kind of a plastic. They used to use it in to film in photography a few decades ago, and to paint and to talk about nature with the unnatural material, with actually artificial materials. This is something that I really like to do in my art, because then it kind of highlights the ecological aspect of the thing, and the way that the nature kind of have this artificial aspect in our life, and the ecological challenge that we all facing with. The red color is inspired from the hibiscus flower. So I used to be a very, very naturalistic painting, a realistic painter. And with the time, especially since moving to New York, I've become to be more and more abstract painting. That I usually take inspiration from the nature, but I pick up really, really specific flowers and specific things that grow in the nature that has a symbolic meaning for me. So the hibiscus is a flower. It's a beautiful flower. As you can see, it's very rich. It's very passionate, and it's very connected to North America. We can see in North America in many, many colors, not only red, but it's also something that symbolizes the Middle East very, very much. You can see it in Israel. You can see it in Mitzvah, in Cairo. You can drink it as a tea, and it's something that symbolizes a mixture of culture for me. And also when I translate this flower into a painting, you can see here a small detail from the painting. It's starting to be something like that reminds very much about flesh, about blood, even something that connected to body. And it's very much connected to my to the huge loss that I had this year, and to a tragic grief that connected to all kinds of body issues. So there is the aspect of the way that it look, but also what it symbolizes in a wide global. I mean, there is all this issue about immigrant flowers, and the way a flower it took from another, like let's say like Middle Eastern places, or like in South America areas, and then moved to another areas on the globe and trying to kind of habitat them. So this is a very tropical flower also. This is another angle, and here you can see a detail with the ink together with the colored pencils. So it's also, with the time of the exhibition, the ink and the water in this round small basin starting to grow up on my paintings. And it's actually creating a new painting that I don't control, another layer on my abstract painting. And this is an installation that it's actually in progress during the exhibition, because every 2 weeks the water and the ink starting to get dry a little bit, and we need to maintain it. So the maintenance aspect of the water, the way it gets dry and the way we need to pour some more water and the way it creates another layer, it's very important in the sense of the water has their own life. And I always say the materials of the art has their own life. I mean, I control the composition, I did my painting, and then there is another thing that we cannot control, and it's starting to do his own way. And it's also very connected to the temperature in the gallery. I mean, if the air conditioner is working or not working. So it's a very kind of living work for me, also for the gallery. And it's something that I think this dialogue between what we can control and what we uncontrol, I found it very, very interesting, connected to nature, of course, and painting nature. This is the first version that I did, hibiscus together with the ocean. This is from a very small detail from an exhibition in Mexico 2 years ago, when I started to work with these long scrolls. Each red painting is 18 yards, which is in one piece, and it's very hard to paint. So there is also this relationship between my body as a painter and the painting that I choose to paint. And of course, it's very uncomfortable to paint such a huge, long painting, but it's create interesting relationship with my body and the way that I approach to this architectural, eventually, structure. This is
Keren,
the hibiscus.
Keren, you have 2 more minutes.
Okay. This is the hibiscus in another version when it was on rice paper, which is a much more natural paper. And eventually, I think you can see also in the exhibition the way that I approach landscape. It's very much in a pragmatic way. I mean, I take the landscape and I start to separate it into these parts. So I will move very quickly because this is another fragment way to see. This is a 38 Mylar painting attached to a plexi circles. Again, another material that it's not natural, that is very bad for the environment, this acrylic, together with the shells that I collected during my residencies in Long Island, which also tells a story about my journey as an artist, as a person. My daughter used to be with me in some of these residencies, so it's really a family journey in a way. This is 18-yard painting of the river that was painted together with rainwater. I mean, this was it's a very, very interesting process about the way that I use water for my house and my studio, together with the water that I collected from the rain. And here you can see slightly the hibiscus. This was the beginning. You can see the red marks in the painting, together with the video that I took under the water in Long Island Sound. And the 2 pillars are actually 2 pieces from another installation that was in a big exhibition that I did in response to the Hudson River and to the reservoir that was in the Bryant Park. And this is a book that actually released a year ago, that tells my story and also another 12 female artists, and the way that locations affected the art, changing from place to place. It's an essay that actually tells the story about water and grief in my art, and written by, my chapter was written by Aliza Edelman and Ktia Alon, and you can see it in my website. I really recommend. It's another angle. So I don't know if I have more time. I don't think, no. Okay, so I really, really hope that everybody will come to the show and see it in person. It's very, very, it's a show you need to experience in person. The video was super great, but I think you would love it also in person. Thank you.
Thank you, Keren. Yeah, I don't want to lose people. I often try and make sure everybody gets their time in before the hour, but we always go over the hour. So I hope you all can stay. We have Christopher yet here to give his presentation next.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone see the share screen here? All right, wonderful. Hi, everyone. My name is Christopher Lin, and I'm an artist and educator based here in New York. I personally have a background in research science, which informs my own practice, which explores systems, both biotic and abiotic, interconnectivity, and climate anxiety. My work at Water Stories centers around a number of works that deal with suspension, submersion, and water chemistry, and I'm really excited to share these works with you today. First, I'd like to thank Elena for inviting me to be part of this ambitious BioBAT Art Space show. It's been really wonderful working with this experimental space surrounded by works that engage with the topic of water in exciting and novel ways through sound, growth, tidal range, adhesion, and a number of other novel approaches, which have been really inspiring to be around. And it's also been inspiring being around so many fantastic artists that are deeply researched through their methods of working and their practices. Thanks also to Patricia, Director of Art Space, who continually shines a spotlight on important works concerning environmental issues through exhibitions, publications, and programming. As mentioned before, the show appears quite a bit different when you're actually there in person, and I kind of think that a lot of how I organized my space was thinking about this really dark exhibition space and these points of light that would almost act like beacons to move one through. And when you're in the space in that back loading dock area, you're sort of moving through in a kind of meditative way. But the first work you'll encounter of mine in Water Stories is this work called Zuru Zuru Drifting from 2020. And it was one of my first works exploring the idea of suspension and buoyancy with closed ecosystems. This word Zuru Zuru is a Japanese onomatopoeia for drifting or dragging. It's a sound that's usually made just to describe this sound of moving through water, and begins to describe the slow shifting and dancing of these small vials within the tank, as if drifting in the ocean toward a shoreline. When I first started working with living materials early in my explorations in sculpture, I found that maintenance and care were a critical part of the labor in creating and upkeeping a work in exhibition. My interest in working with biotic materials stemmed through a desire to capture a kind of potential energy of growth, of death and decay, as well as slow, almost imperceptible kinetic energies or changes within these forms. Time also becomes a critical component within these living works. When you're encountering them within their lifespan, you wonder where they are within the overall course of their exhibition, how long they've been alive, and this makes the present experience with the work a bit more meaningful than a fixed sculpture or painting. As these living sculptures that I engaged with became more complicated, so did the upkeep. So I began researching methods to account for the upkeep through design methods or design methodologies. This quickly led to closed ecosystems or terrariums. Through layering substrates and inclusion of microbiota and detritivores, these systems could become almost entirely self-sustaining outside of minute water loss. So within each of these ecosystems, there are layerings of bioactive soil, compost, as well as activated carbon. So water filtrates through and begins to circulate, as well as growth lights. So all of this becomes a system that is self-sustaining. These particular micro terrariums within Zuru Zuru were created in 2020 in the height of the COVID pandemic as somewhat of a response to lockdown. I was interested in the many small, unique narratives I was encountering just walking outside when I was escaping my really small New York apartment. I encountered people talking to one another across fire escapes as a means to connect in a moment of forced disconnection. And this became one way that I began to think about how to respond to this pandemic, something that really affected us all greatly. I would also frequently go on hikes in the Hudson Valley to release the pressure of this really small, cramped living space in New York City. And as I was hiking through the Hudson Valley, I would often gather mosses within small bags, bring them back to my apartment, and try to reenact these landscapes. And I would try to keep parts of these landscapes with me. Oops. As they collected on my windowsill, these small samples of the wild began to remind me of many survival mechanisms we collectively as humans use to allay our concerns for global catastrophe. One thing that I think about quite often as a response to climate change is the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, a seed bank that's designed to preserve the world's vital crops in the case of societal collapse. And so thinking of small samples and active preservation, this came to mind. And I also became interested in apocalyptic narratives that seem to rhyme with this desire for preservation, like the tale of Noah and the Ark, where God unleashes a great flood, and an ark that Noah builds preserves all living creatures. The Ark and the Seed Vault are two similar structures that come out of the same impulse, a very human impulse to rapidly preserve in the face of impending doom. So within Zuru Zuru, this became animated through a kind of post-human vision, speculating on a post-human construction, as if these vials had washed away from the vault that had long gone into disrepair, a vault that was meant to keep each of these organisms. And as these fragments of the landscape drift in the water that they're contained within, they also long to reconnect into a continuous landscape once again. So each time I come back to the exhibition, there are new arrangements of these, and it becomes a kind of dance within the tank. This post-human vision was expanded in Fossil Memory, another work that's in water stories, in more illustrative ways. Fossil Memory animates visions from organisms that are calcified and long dead. In this installation, there is a bleached brain coral that is in a kind of dreamy action. It's resting on a pillow, and above it suspends a larger terrarium that contains another section of the Hudson Valley. I was really interested in opposing vectors of gravity and buoyancy within this that push and pull at these objects. The pillow submerged within the water is naturally buoyant, and you can kind of see that lifting at the edges, as well as in the label, kind of pulls upwards. And the bleached brain coral, approximately the same size of a human brain, holds it down, pushing it down further. And floating above it, like a dream, is a lush landscape forming a hilltop or an island. I was referencing fantastical images from childhood stories like Utopic Paradise of Zeal from Chrono Trigger, which met its own doom due to catastrophe linked to human progress, as well as Hayao Miyazaki's Castle in the Sky from 1986. Really fantastical stories that begin to show a kind of utopian vision that never really last. And that was something that I was quite interested in animating through this work. This work also introduced for me elements of reflection and refraction with the inclusion of a larger vessel. As light bends around the different densities of mediums, the water, the glass, and the air, it also bends and magnifies different areas within the tank. And so you get these different views of what's contained within. And surprising growths also have begun to emerge from larger systems like fungal growth from spores that are embedded within the pillows of moss, and bacterial biofilm on the water layer, which can also form an ice-like layer on the surface with this kind of porthole view down into the ecosystem. In thinking about the refraction that I began to explore with Fossil Memory, I started work on this column of microenvironments called chemical refraction, which continues this exploration of buoyancy and refraction in a bit more sensational ways. Chemical refraction explores a kind of beauty and terror at the same time of synthetic solutions, a kind of sublime experience And these solutions are engineered for human needs. Inside each of these solutions are ecospheres, these small contained ecosystems, and separated between, they're kept safe from this really toxic solution by a really thin barrier of glass. Antifreeze and other synthetic refrigerants are designed to protect machines from overheating, but also in turn break down the ozone layer. And so I was really interested in this kind of paradox that was presented with designing a solution for something, but also in turn outside of the system that it was designed for would create harm. Upon discovering the odd refraction of light in fossil memory, I began researching the effects of refraction. Here are some of my image samples. The bending and splitting of light as it passes through different mediums. This is observed in prisms as the geometry of the glass scatters multi-wavelength white light into various visible spectra, or even when we're looking at the atmosphere as the sun begins to set, you also see changes of color and light from blue to orange during sunset. And so I was really interested in various ways that refraction is experienced, including a really lovely drawing of a rainbow by René Descartes. I also began researching other liquids as I was thinking about refraction and became interested in the metaphoric and sensorial possibilities of synthetic solutions and quickly ran into antifreeze. Antifreeze is used in mechanical systems to hold this mechanical system in a range of temperatures. So you don't go above a certain temperature or below. And in an engine, this is really critical for not overheating. I found this really quite resonant within a science fiction response to the climate crisis, as in certain desires to design our way out of problems. And I learned that antifreeze and coolant manufacturers also use color coding to denote which engine types they are used for, typically by the brand of the vehicle. And these refrigerants became really fascinating to me in their deeply synthetic colorization. So I began to connect this to my interest in closed ecosystems, which are self-sustaining, and I began to experiment with ecospheres, which are fully sealed biotic systems. These ecospheres, which are fully sealed, contain a small sample of carefully balanced water chemistry to sustain a number of Halocardinia rubra shrimp, or Opa ula in Hawaiian. These are shrimp that are native to volcanic tide pools in Hawaii, where they often survive in really, really small isolated pockets of salt water, sustained only by the algae that's grown from the sunlight since they're exposed. This is a fairly hardy organism and allowed me to experiment with suspension in toxic substances to heighten a feeling of danger and fragility. That just this really thin layer of glass separating these organisms from life and death provided. So I began to pour these different engine coolants and mixing the colors into pickling jars to give a sort of vision of effectively pickling these closed environments. They're floating within it, submerged, and you also get this really wonderful magnification of what's happening, the bending of light around the outside edge because it's a curved surface. Each jar contains a floating ecosystem supporting a live system of algae and shrimp. And these ecologies are suspended in the hypersynthetically colored antifreeze. And these illustrate the extreme contradictions of our modern world for me. Both the chemical pleasure, we get a really wonderful sensorial component here, these really bright synthetic, almost celebratory colors, and the underlying darkness that is contained within the production of them and our need for them. The highly saturated spectra are also related quite closely as I was just looking around at my own documents of temperature data maps that analyze climate change over time. Maps like this visualize much more clearly shifts in average temperature, which have had extreme effects on our experience through extreme weather, as in the many once in 100-year hurricanes that we've been experiencing. We're seeing one this week, especially, and I think we're getting sense that this is going to happen more and more frequently. Wildfires, droughts, coral reef bleaching, all of these are in effect due to small, minute shifts in temperature. While our individual felt experience is quite minimal, as in we've felt like we've had a warm winter this year, the downstream effects continue to snowball and turn into more and more extreme outcomes. The last work I'm going to share with you today within Water Stories is Business as Usual, which comes from a very different direction, a chemistry-based exploration of water rather than the previous works, which are much more engaged with physics through buoyancy and refraction and color. I wanted to engage closely with the water of the Hudson River using water samples taken directly from the Hudson. First, when I constructed this work for Stand 4 at Bay Ridge, and then again at BioBAT right outside on the Hudson waterfront, I went out into the water, gathered water samples, and began to conduct a sort of chemical reaction within the gallery. I wanted to more directly engage with the water and its relation to New York City at large. And so this is the construction that you'll see in Water Stories. It's a bit more of a tableau, objects that are gathered together to tell a bit of a story. And it engages with my research on urban runoff and the chemistry of our surrounding New York Harbor through a chemical process called electrolysis. This is a chemically active installation. On the right-hand side, you see a little box, and that's a power supply that provides direct DC power, and it runs cables into the water, which then precipitates out various solutions and ions that are contained within our water quite invisibly. So within the tank are some New York tchotchkes. These are things that I got from tourism stores around the city, a Statue of Liberty, a One World Trade, a small figurine of the Wall Street Bull, the Empire State Building and the Chrysler Building is a kind of small New York City skyline. And these are all cast in a metal, which makes it really conductive. And these act as an anode within the tank. And buried underneath the precipitates are various bars of metal that act as the cathode. And as a current is run through the system, sorry about that. As the current is run through the system, there are various precipitates that begin to form within the water, which make visible the really, really invisible contents of our water, which come from things like sewage runoff, as well as industrial waste and everything that we've seen within our water. So when I pulled this water out of the waterfront, it was relatively clear, but just by running a current through it, we begin to see a ton of other things begin to build up. I was also interested in sort of combining this with an aspect of extractive economies. So looking at the banker's desk, our process of functioning within a lot of our ecological collapse, and also a sense of my own complicity within this. So this was a reference image that I was really interested in while making this work. This is an image of a transection of the New York Harbor from a paper, New York Harbor, Resilience in the Face of 4 Centuries of Development. I began researching the waterfront last year when I was invited by Janine Bardo of Stand 4, along with Patricia, to produce a work about Bay Ridge. And due to its proximity to the water, Stand 4 and Bay Ridge itself, I became deeply interested in how our city is in relation to the Hudson River, which began my research on Business as Usual. Looking at this image of transection, there are a number of interactions that the city has with the water that surrounds it, but it became apparent to me that the city as an island is surrounded by its own waste, which affects not only the living systems in the water, but also the inhabitants of the city itself. So this diagram gives us a sense of why we have so much waste in the water. This is an image of combined sewage and stormwater overflow, or CSO, which is one of the primary reasons we have dangerous spikes of sewage concentration in the Hudson River. This graphic visualized one outfall pipe from Manhattan. There are nearly 500 of them in New York City alone. And as the city receives over ½ an inch of rain, which is fairly common, water collected from downspouts and storm drains overflow and begin to outflow directly into the Hudson River and the East River, our surrounding waters. This is an image of one of the outflow pipes here in New York City. And you can kind of see the crusty precipitates that begin to form around the edges of the water. And this gives you a sense of what is actually contained within. But when the water comes out, it looks relatively clear. So there's a sense of the invisible and the visible sort of interplaying within our water systems. Generally, our overflow only discharge untreated sewage when there's been a rain event that overloads the system, but not always. These sewage discharges are technically permitted by the New York State, but even after 37 years after the passage of our Clean Water Act, this seems pretty surprising that this is still happening. This map gives us a sense of where all of the sewage overflow outpipes are around New York City, marked by blue dots, alongside wastewater treatment plants, which are fewer and far in between. These are the wastewater treatment plants are marked in gray. And so the water really becomes a representation of us and our action. And through our own sewage, our own waste, it is a kind of a portrait of our own collective action. As I was experimenting with the water, I became interested in another chemical property of water, which is electrolysis. By running a direct current through the water with dissolved ions or salts, our bay is naturally brackish. So it was a really helpful sort of mechanism to begin to understand the water itself. A chemical reaction begins to happen within the water, separating hydrogen from oxygen. So in a really closed sample, you have a separation between the H and the O, but also we begin to see precipitates of ions begin to appear within the water solution. And so the brackish water was a perfect, of Hudson River was a perfect sample to test this out. While the water in the Hudson is visibly clear, it certainly is not clean. And due to sewage runoff, industrial waste, and oil spills, like the Superfund site at Greenpoint that we heard about earlier. And so using the process of electrolysis for me was a way to make the invisible visible through chemistry. This process of electrolysis also has potential beneficial applications to our ecosystems as well, through the formation of something called biorock. As the chemical reaction progresses, if there is calcium within the water, it begins to that's suspended within the water, it begins to crystallize around the cathode, which is connected to the negative lead of the power supply. This calcium crystallization is incredibly beneficial as a seed or catalyst for reef growth, as organisms like oyster fry or coral spawn prefer calcium carbonate to root onto to begin growth and ultimately to build a colony. And so as I was researching the water, I also discovered that the Hudson River was once the most populous site of oysters in the world, but really once it became colonized by Americans, by Europeans, this plummeted. And so there are a number of different organizations around the bay that are starting to build this up, like the Billion Oyster Project. Returning to business as usual, this takes the form of a sample of water taken from just outside BioBAT. This particular documentation was taken from my show at Stand 4, where the water was taken from Bay Ridge and began to form a kind of foamy layer at the surface. And as I mentioned before, the tchotchkes below begin to give us a feeling of the skyline, and this foamy overgrowth begins to form almost like a storm system. Other objects on this table begin to represent a kind of complicity within our destruction, work continuing as always, business as usual. I collected the precipitates at the bottom of the tank and created ink from it using gum arabic. And that is used to mark this ledger down in the middle, which is used to mark fairly unremarkable hashes within a ledger. These don't refer to anything, but just mark time and count. And sand dollar urchins are counted as well on the left, which have been bleached and are counted as coins in stacks of 5, like each of the hashes. I was kind of interested in individual lives equating to a unit. I felt that this work was incredibly heavy and needed some kind of acknowledgement of the humanness of the enactor, and made a kind of, escapist landscape in the bottom drawer, a means to escape the bleakness through another kind of fantastical, lush, utopic space. And the brain coral from Fossil Memory makes another return here as a kind of operator of a disembodied representation of our reason and progress. And like the separate cathodes within the system that are slowly calcifying due to electrolysis, it too is calcified. Within the tank, the the water sample undergoes a reaction that looks a bit like a snow globe. The cathodes bubble up as they are separating the water. You can kind of see it through here, a slow motion, a rising and a falling of the precipitates that begin to build up at the surface layer and fall back down. There's one more video. And this begins a really slow, almost meditative reaction that began to get more and more post-apocalyptic as the reaction continued. As parts of the metal and rust color began to leach out into the water, depending on the site that the water was collected at, we have very different precipitates that collect at the base. So just to give one sort of time-lapse image of what the reaction looks like. Over time, it got more and more orange with some transparency at the top and more precipitates collected at the base until the sky itself fell down. When the cathodes, these New York City objects were pulled back out of the system, you could see quite a bit of calcification around the outside, just from calcium carbonate that was within the water. And these were then re-added to the exhibition at BioBAT to continue the reaction there. So thank you. That's my presentation for today. You can follow my work on Instagram at christopherlin.jpg or my website, christopherlinstudio.com. Thank you, everyone.
So, well, that is about an hour and a half, which is usually where I cut off the recording, but I've asked our audience if they have any questions. I'm not seeing anything, just some positive comments about the work and the show. And I'm really, I don't know if I want to say proud. It's not like I'm your mom or something, but of all of you, and Elena, for your vision, really taking hold of the space and making it available for artists to really stretch out. That's such a rare opportunity. And I'm sure all the artists here are looking at it like, I would love to be in a show there. So yeah, Christopher and Keren, you've obviously had a wonderful opportunity to show your work there and stretch out. Keren, so many pieces and a lot of really thoughtful work. And Christopher, always smart. Love your work. And yeah, I think I'll end it here, and we'll go into just kind of a private mode with our audience if people want to stay on and ask questions. So thank you for being here, everyone. Let's see.
Thank you, everyone.